How safe is the water? 1 week after the Mount Polley mine spill, we look at the bigger questions about British Columbia's waterways. Also, what the spill means for the salmon run. I'm Affan Chowdhry. Welcome to Globe Now. It was a week ago that a dam failed at the Mount Polley mine in British Columbia. Millions of cubic meters of mining wastewater, quite possibly toxic, went rushing into nearby creeks, rivers, and lakes. What followed was a water use ban by locals and questions: what caused the breach? And what will be the short and long-term impact on the ecosystem? Well, the Globe's Andrea Woo has been following the story, and we've reached her in Vancouver. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks, Brad.
What is the latest about the safety of the water for residents in that area?
So as you mentioned, there was initially a water ban put in place affecting up to 300 residents in and around the community of Likely. This meant no drinking the water, no bathing or swimming in it, no feeding it to pets or livestock. That ban has since been partially rescinded for the area of North Quesnel River, but it remains in place around Polley Lake and Hazeltine Creek, so there's still an estimated 100 people affected by that.
And just remind the audience, who's going to clean up the spill and pay for it?
Well, in BC, we do have what's called a polluter pay model, which makes the industry responsible for cleanup and recovery from spills and any other sort of industrial accidents. The province has already ordered them to submit a cleanup action plan, and the company has said that it is happy to do so.
I mean, 1 week later, how much do we know about what caused the breach?
Not a lot, really. We do know that just 3 months ago, the mine was warned for having too much water in its tailings pond. The ministry issued a warning to the mine, and the mine pumped some of that water out into a pit. We also know that the mine had applied for a permit amendment that would allow it to increase the amount of effluent that it could discharge, and that permit was pending at the time of the breach. But as for what ultimately failed and what caused this dam to breach, we just don't know yet. The Ministry of Energy and Mines has said that the mine passed numerous geotechnical inspections. There were no sort of indicators that something was awry, but that's a bit concerning because obviously something did go absolutely sideways here, and we don't know what that is. And it raises a lot of questions about what that means for other tailings ponds in BC.
Well, what kind of concern is there about the impact of this spill on the Sockeye salmon run?
There's been a lot of concern about the impact on fish habitats here, and rightfully so. Anecdotally, we hear from people who say that they found dead fish floating in the rivers. Researchers from the University of Northern BC have actually taken one of these dead fish and submitted it to the Ministry of Environment. They said they sent that off to the lab for testing. We don't have the results of that yet. The ministry is also using gill nets to catch live fish. I believe they're rainbow trout, so they can test those fish tissues, but so far we don't have the results.
There are other mines, as you were saying, that use this kind of pond system for mining waste. What kind of conversation do you think this spill will spark about mining in general in British Columbia?
There are people who have been very critical about mining regulations in BC for some time already, and they have absolutely seized on this, using it as an illustration of why the province needs stricter regulations and penalties in the mining industry. For example, after the water levels were too high just a few months ago, why was the mine not penalized, they're asking. It was essentially a slap on the wrist. They were told to fix the water levels. They did. Perhaps if there were stricter penalties, this would have been taken a bit more seriously. The Environmental Law Center at the University of Victoria actually released a report in 2011 that said of 6 enforcement actions that the province took against coal and metal mines from 2006 to 2010, 5 of those penalties were less than $600, which they say is little incentive to comply with the law.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. Well, we want to hear from you. How concerned are you about the impact of the Mount Polley mine spill on British Columbia's waterways? And how confident are you that the government and the industry can manage the spill? Tweet us at Globe Now. So we are talking about the impact of the spill on wildlife. The immediate answer is unclear, but the fear among experts and First Nations is certainly there. This is the time of year that the Sockeye salmon return to British Columbia's rivers to start a remarkable journey and to eventually spawn. But the breach could impact the migration of Sockeye salmon in the Quesnel system. Craig Orr of the Watershed Watch Salmon Society explains why.
British Columbians say salmon is to British Columbia like the French language is to Quebec, but unfortunately this doesn't seem to be translated into protection. There's a lot of debris in the lake moving around and blocking some habitat. The big question is, where are these fish going to spawn? I think we need some assessments from independent biologists to tell us exactly what the extent of the habitat damage is. There are still a lot of questions around toxic metals and the impacts on resident fish and also on the baby sockeye as well. The sockeye are really important for feeding the bears and the eagles and the people. They provide all kinds of ecosystem benefits. The bigger issue is how governments are protecting the environment. And we've seen the federal government pulling back on environmental protection. We've seen the provincial government pulling back to promote development. I think we need better regulations for mines. I think that's quite obvious, and maybe this disaster will help prompt more scrutiny. It's a 4-year cycle for the sockeye, so we won't see the blip next year, but we will see some damage down the road. I think British Columbians and Canadians have some cause to be concerned over the future of this particular run of sockeye.
Well, that's all for today's show. If you've got a moment, hop onto Twitter. How confident are you that the interests of industry and wildlife can be balanced? Tweet us at Globe Now. I'm Affan Chowdhry. Thanks for watching.